I saw the topic for the evening, and I knew what story I was going to tell. People do some crazy things that they think are sure things. I think my favorites are those congregations in the 19th century who knew that the Lord was coming on this day, and they all sold their homes and gave up everything and sat on the mountainside and waited for the Lord to come in the sunrise, and were embarrassed. My embarrassment wasn't quite that bad, but it wasn't good either. I was a member of the most gullible of species, a graduate student. And if you come toward the end of your graduate program, you get pressured into two different things that are kind of opposed to each other. The one is to finish your thesis or dissertation and graduate, and the other is to find a job, and they often interfere with one another. There's not a good, clean way to do this. That if you graduate, you don't have a job, you're just left hanging until you do find one. If you find a job and you haven't graduated yet, which is what I did twice, it's not an easy thing either, because then you've got to go out and you've got to work a full-time job, and then you got to come home at night and you got to write. And both cases, it took me months to finish. Some poor people never finish because they work hard all day and they come home and they're tired and they have a beer and they go to sleep, and the next day it's the same thing. So this is sort of the desperate strait I was in. In addition to that, I was married and we were trying to have a kid, and I needed a job in order to support a kid. So I was a prime candidate for being a real sucker. And then the source of many good things, one of my old professors called me up, and my background is in fishery biology, which is pretty strange. There's not a whole lot of people who have the foolishness to do a thing like that. So that keeps the competition for jobs under control. It's kind of like Ford in North Dakota in the wintertime, you know. He keeps 15 below, keeps out the riffraff. And so he called me up and he said, I know a group of commercial fishermen in northern Michigan who want to hire a fisheries biologist. Would you like to talk to them? Well, of course I want to talk to them. And I'm weird in a way, in many ways, but I have a PhD, but I like school less than any other PhD that I know. So I was really eager to get out of school and go to go to work. And many, if not most, PhDs are like two of my sisters, who constitute the Dr. Headrick Club, and they were entered into state institutions at the age of 5 and have never left. They're still in state institutions. I prefer the real world, and so I was looking for a way to escape a state institution, and a group of commercial fishermen was about as far from academia as I could possibly find. The other was the location. Look on a map at northern Michigan where you have Lake Michigan coming in here and Lake Huron coming in here and Lake Superior up to the north, and you look at it straight down, it's mostly water. For a fish guy, that's heaven. So we go in and met with this group of commercial fishermen. And they had a problem. A lot of my other clients have the same problem. They're over-regulated by the state authorities. And they needed a defense attorney, basically. They needed someone who could defend themselves against the state of Michigan. And I told them how we could do this, because I hatched out of the same nest as the guys from the state of Michigan. And we sat down and we devised a plan to collect data and come up with our own version of a management plan for that part of the Great Lakes. And they got all excited. And they hired me right on the spot. And the title of my talk comes from what I got out of that meeting. So what would you like? And I said, I want one of your hats. Because they had, their association had these ball caps with their print of the logo on them. So I got one of those, and I got another that's similar. I still have them. But $1,000 is a lot of money when you're a lowly graduate student. My wife had a job, but it was for the county welfare department, so that doesn't pay a whole lot of money either. So I had spent $1,000 chasing this rainbow. And they said, okay, get everything together, write us up a proposal, and one of our guys is a truck. We'll send a truck down to Columbus, Ohio, right before Christmas and pick up your stuff, and we'll move you up here. You find a place to live and do all the other arrangements that you have to make. So I proceeded to do that. The economy really sucks in northern Michigan. It was no problem at all finding a nice house right on the shores of Lake Huron. It was like 200 feet out from the front door, and where there's one of the Great Lakes. And I, a lowly graduate student, could afford to go out and rent one of these houses. And I took a course from the Small Business Administration into setting up a business. One of the most valuable things they taught me is to be sure you have a banker, an attorney, and an insurance agent. And if you don't know what they're for, you should not be in business. So we went into town and we talked to bankers and attorneys and insurance agents. They were really glad to see us because, oh my goodness, it's another source of income for our little town. We're so glad to see you. And we drove back to Ohio, and my wife in her wisdom said, you're gonna be driving up and down this road 100 times before you get that dissertation done. And she's right, it is difficult to work a full-time job and write a dissertation at the same time. We got done. I let my advisor know that I had found a job, so I resigned my fellowship. My wife told her supervisor that we were moving to Michigan, resigned her job, told our landlady, we had a dear old landlady, 80 years old, who let us live there for next to nothing as long as we could shovel the snow, mow the lawn, and bury the cat. That was the source of a couple of other great tales, but it was a job I had to perform while we were there. And we packed up everything we owned. And I had prepared a proposal. We agreed on the salary, and then I figured out what expenses I was going to have. There are certain things that I would need to conduct field activities. And I knew very well what they were. And it came out to be just about equal to my salary. They didn't know it, but that was a bargain because I've developed such proposals for many companies, and the typical multiplier is 3. You take the direct cost of the salaries of the people doing multiply it times 3, and that's an estimate of what your total cost is going to be when you put the overhead in. And I was giving it to them for 2. But they didn't know that, they were fishermen. So we got all packed and ready to go, and they didn't show up. So I gave them a call and I said, "Where's the truck?" And they answered, "What truck?" "Oh, we have a problem." He said, "We got to talk. We thought that when we hired you, you would be able to take care of everything with your salary." I said, "Well, did you notice that the expenses were about equal to the salary? What does that leave for me to live on?" "Well, we want you to come back up here and we want you to work this out." I said, "I'm a graduate student. I've already spent $1,000 on this. I really can't pursue this anymore," and I let it go. So all I had to show for my efforts was 2 $500 ball caps. So I went back to my advisor, and he gave me back my fellowship. My wife went back to her job. They gave her back her job. Then I had some adrenaline to burn off. Seriously. Have you ever heard of a rafter monkey? It's a term in carpentry where you've got to be up in the rafters, hammering the rafters together. And if you're really angry, nothing gets rid of that adrenaline better than being 20 feet up in the air, hanging on to a rafter by your legs, steadying yourself with one arm and pounding large nails as hard as you can. Do that for a week and all your problems go away. Well, I've entertained you enough. Thank you very much.